This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill.
Do not be afraid. We are now in control of what you hear.
1, 2, 3, testing.
A journey to the far reaches of knowledge and the unknown.
I can't believe I just saw that.
From aliens to angels, conspiracies to cover-ups.
One soul and
Preeminent power.
From extraterrestrials to exposing the truth.
I'll try to explain as much as I can.
You're listening to Planet X.
You're listening to Planet X.
Planet X.
You're listening to Planet X, and coming up next, it's the Tony Topping Show.
This is Planet X. Planet X.
Broadcasting to you from the studios of Planet X, this is the Tony Topping Show. Now, Hunting the UFO Mystery Adventures into the Unknown is an event that we've arranged for Saturday the 9th of November 2013, and it's between 1300 and 1800 hours. It's a one-day series of lectures, and it's presented by three of the UK's leading UFO researchers, writer and author Nigel Mortimer, broadcaster, myself, Tony Topping, and UFO experiencer Paula Green. Now, the talks will be followed by an evening skywatch at the Settle Sundial portal site. Refreshments and stores will be available, and the tables to rent are open to all at £10 each. The event will be held as follows at the St John's Church Hall, Settle, North Yorkshire, England, BD24 9JH. That's the St John's Church Hall, England, BD24 9JH. Tony Topping is speaking at 1:15 on remote viewing. Nigel Mortimer is speaking on portals and UFOs, and Paula Elizabeth Green is speaking on her own UFO contact experiences called Yorkshire's Fourth Kind. There will be a question and answer sessions, and at one point in the evening there will be the opportunity for those wishing to attend the evening skywatch to eat and visit Settle. At 7:30 p.m. we'll reassemble back at the church hall to attend a skywatch at the portal location. This could be very, very interesting indeed, so bring your cameras. Tickets will be available for an online purchase to secure a seat, or if preferred you may pay on the door. The price is £20 for the whole afternoon and evening, and I can assure you listeners I'm giving away a free DVD on remote viewing that's worth £30, and it's absolutely excellent. It's packed with courses, materials, the Russian remote viewing stuff, which is very rare material indeed. Now, tickets can be purchased from the following website, which is http, the usual / and then hunting-the-ufo-mystery.webnode.com. So that's hunting-the-ufo-mystery.webnode.com. We look forward to seeing you there. Hope you'll come and say hello, and I greatly think that it's going to be a smashing event. Well, good evening, it's the Tony Topping Show, it's 8 p.m, it's Tuesday. Hello, how are you all? I'm back. This last week has been a bit chaotic due to various psychic attacks that came my way, including one that happened around about 4 to 3 o'clock in the morning, which was absolutely horrifying and disorientated me for the rest of the week, which is its purpose. You will find that people like myself who are in the alternative media and have a clue as to what is going on will get this, and this is what the show is all about. I gave an interview last Sunday night to Unknown Origins Radio regarding my Manchurian-style candidate mind control and invasion of the mind and all the nasty stuff that went with it. And coming in November is going to be a film from the Filter View Films team that will be uploaded to YouTube on the Tab TV channel called Alienated. Now, they may kook me up, they may not, it's to be expected, but I don't think they'll do too badly for me. I hope to maybe do a further project with them. But on that film, I take them through the locations where I was placed under overt surveillance, and what is that really like, listeners, when somebody is really following you and is really speaking to you about what is going on in terms of mind invasion technology. Because, as I say, we will go into the very pub where an incident took place, where a gentleman, a man and a woman wandered into this pub and mentioned something about the mind control that was happening to me that only he would know. A further incident also occurred with two other people. It's absolutely scandalous, really, what is going on and what has been going on. And people, it appears, the mainstream media remain mute. There are a couple of journalists out there who I think might be able to get the public to know that this needs to be mainstream. It is corruption of the highest degree. And further, at the moment, we see continuing corruption in the UK and the US. And I note also that we've got the British Red Cross on the streets as the country appears to be collapsing on its knees, and nobody fails to notice. Of course, middle-class England will start to notice when their wealth starts being confiscated. That's to come. Now, you may wonder why I'm puzzled by all this a great deal. I'm puzzled in the context of this radio show which deals with the paranormal and UFOs. I'm greatly puzzled by the ignorance, not so much ignorance, that might be a wrong word to say actually with respect to his position, but I'm greatly puzzled by the puzzlement of the Director of National Security in America, Mr. James Clapper, who stood there when the American government had shut down and said, I can't understand this, I've never seen anything like it, we're partially shut down, blah, blah, blah. And as a journalist have argued, and in Sunday's show, Breaking the Matrix, have also indicated, the direct national security threat lies within Wall Street and the big international banks upon the United States of America. It doesn't get to feed the people who are in need over there with their food stamps program shutting off. This is bizarre in the extreme, and more bizarre is the reaction of the National Security Agency, who intend further, on behalf of the very system that is causing the national security threat, to spy on their behalf. That I found even more bizarre. And why do I find that bizarre, dear listener? I find it bizarre because I've looked at the intelligence data from the world of paranormal espionage to try and get a grip of what was going on with me, and I stumbled across quite a few things. David Icke, a very good investigative journalist and researcher, would clearly indicate that there is a non-human force behind this. I think there's a non-human force behind this, and I think that the governments of this world know what it is, and that what we're in fact witnessing is some kind of covert war going on behind the scenes. There are some important conclusions, I think, that the US intelligence community reached in the 1950s, which is what I want to talk about with you this evening. Now, it took me a very long time to understand that indeed mind control and covert intelligence harassment of UFO researchers goes on, but it slowly dawned that the people responsible possibly were also not human. There's a distinct possibility that is going on. I cannot understand why we're having the continual world wars, for example, like we have done on a massive scale. And it is perhaps because something else intruded into our reality. And that something else is very interesting, because the US intelligence community, before starting the remote viewing operations of 1970, observed that UFOs were capable of mind control, and that the US fought an air war in 1950 and formed an intelligence gathering organisation that concluded UFOs were demonic. They were also termed non-human entity. Now, Ingo Swann, the founder of the remote viewing program in the US in 1970, would say the issue is to separate signal from noise. And so I think what we must do in terms of disclosure is take into account what is peaceful ET contact, and take into it which is signal, as opposed to the chaos that we're seeing at the moment. Quite a few researchers, including Robert Stanley, who I hope to get on the show, have certainly concluded that there is some non-human element behind all this chaos that we're seeing that involves very clever trickery, very clever charades, and it's interesting that I reach these conclusions in a hope to learn more from peaceful interactions with UFOs. Now, some in the military may of course frown on this, yet the UFOs and the encounters with them are perhaps the least of the worries facing the human race. The covert harassment by any government agency, either black or white agency, is a crime, and I think violation of human rights has certainly occurred with me. Definitely. The other morning when I was psychically attacked, I was synthetically attacked by something that was pretty bloody nasty. And I can't begin to put it into words, but it's like being sat here now, listener. Except you're not sat here now, you're in an utter reality, and it's tangible, it's solid, and so are the effects of it, whether it's screaming gunfire into your head, whether it's screaming machine gun sounds, whether it's setting you on fire. It's the reality of it is real, absolutely as real as be, and that's because it is inception and dream warfare as well as mind control. And I think that what you sow you will reap, and the recoil from it will be shocking. I think as the unknown has a habit of being a harsh teacher. This has all been written, I think, in various publications and ancient texts and so on and so forth. And I think that, every destructive action, let us say, countries like America have done on this planet, China, whatever, these major countries, I think that there could be a recoil of it in a most unusual way. And I think that could be quite nasty if we do not show more respect and look out and care for each other. At the moment, in British society, we're not caring for each other. It's slowly being eroded. All very subtle indeed. And I think that, I started getting the attention from a mysterious covert agency here in the in the UK, which I think has ties into the US. I think that they're off radar. I don't think anybody really knows who they are, actually. I think it would be wrong to kind of like label the mainstream intelligence agencies as understanding who they are. I think they're completely off the wall. But my mind was emotionally crippled by all this a long time ago, it's one of the things that would happen was you appeared to be held awake while asleep. And then one incident that happened in January 2001 is that you're held awake while asleep. And you're relaxed while they're torturing you. It's absolutely horrendous, but if you can imagine, one of the effects will be like a stabbing into the head, like a punch into the head. And it's like a Hitchcock-style theme tune blasting into you while they're doing this punch. And as I recall, the guy, my controller, we will say, because it was somebody behind all the delivery of this technology, had simulated this as if at a church altar. And altars, as we will see in mind control, are split personalities of the psychic. Of the psyche, should I say. And the artificial background was, as the simulation ran in my head, the magnificent abbey that we've got here in Selby. So it appeared. And what happened during this simulation, if you can imagine an artificial simulation happening inside you that is tangible, completely real, and it was beyond my comprehension. But I remember I was being at the altar in my local abbey, and in this strange scenario that I was in. And I remember my head vibrating. It was terrible because part of you appears strange. You see, part of you appears strangely intrigued by what is going on. And then what happened then was it was like I was being blasted into. My mind was being blasted into. And I was presented with a knife that stabbed me repeatedly. I mean, it was like a stabbing sensation. It was absolutely horrifying. I awoke in shock. I thought I would die. Actually, I thought I would die, and I said this so casually, but I did. It was horrendous, and fear did grip me throughout the week that happened, and that was the first week of January 2001. It's a miracle that I survived. But that is, dear listener, the artificial world of mind control for some of us who are targeted. He's out there, is this man. I know you're out there. You came into the pub. I know that you're out there. I know what you did. You thought that you would never get revealed, or you would possibly get away with this in some way. But I think you picked on the wrong man on that evening when you came to see me. When you came to see me, God only knows what you were doing and what you planned to do. But it didn't work out, thank God. And that's all you can say on that issue. It's very upsetting. It's just very, very... And I think the Buddha teaches absolute wisdom to say in divine service, to make an apology and a forgiveness. That really is the art of enlightenment. It really, really is. Really. Anyway, before I upset myself even further, listeners, I think that they were testing some type of non-lethal weapon upon me. They persisted, constantly did these people, in telling me to keep quiet about my liaison with the UFO craft, which were often turning up. Now, UFO craft, over the years I have learnt to differentiate between UFO aliens, UFO as in 80% atmospheric phenomenon, possibly a satellite. So what they were giving reference to was UFOs that were turning up over my house. In the past I've associated them with aliens and such like, but I think that I'm not sure precisely what was going on there, but that's still happening at the moment. The UFOs are still coming over my house, and I'm going to be filming them. Very interesting indeed, isn't it? I did some journals. I wrote some journals about the effects that this had on me in my daily life, and the writing's terrible. Not the writing being terrible, but the fact that the journals, if you look at them, they bear no absolute cohesion to what is going on whatsoever. They look like a jumbled mess of puzzlement to me reacting to a situation. Of course, then you add the equation that you're in some type of dark inception dream warfare internet that is non-locality, and then the situation begins to subtly make sense as to what was going on. I'm not part of the equation, and yet I am. Strange, but it helped me to understand that. Now, in terms of mind control, which is at all levels all around us, it is often claimed that some are subjected to mind control and implants and illegal abduction. Now, mind control is, of course, nothing new. According to the records in the book The Illuminati Formula, which is written by Fritz Wheeler, it reads, "The basic techniques were developed in German, Scottish, Italian and English Illuminati families and have been done for centuries. Some report that some of the techniques go back to ancient Egypt and ancient Babylon, to the ancient mystery religions. The Nazis are known to have studied ancient Egyptian texts in their mind control research. The records and secrets of the generational Illuminati bloodlines are very well guarded secrets. Even when I've learnt about the location of secret depositories of some of the Illuminati's secrets in Europe, America and Asia, their records and secrets are too well guarded to be examined. The intelligence agencies such as MI6 began investigating these mind control techniques early this century, but their records have been routinely destroyed and tampered with. There are some survivors and professionals who know that the British use program-based trauma mind control, which is what is there. Now, interestingly enough, we have freedom of speech, and I think that Article 9 and 10 of human rights legislation applies to what I'm saying here. Defo. Common among conspiracy writers is the Illuminati are, it appears, the force behind many of the world's ills. I shall say later that I think, if we were to go into the area of UFOs, I'm trying to keep it balanced, but I think the UFO occupants are very familiar indeed with this controlling force. There is not a mention of this in the citizens' hearing for UFOs, because it's not in my backyard. There's not a mention of this in Dr. Greer's camp. Well, there is, but not in the same way as we would think. There's some kind of controlling element going on here that is possibly not human. And the ETs are aware of this. I think ET does exist, and I think that humanity is giving them are far too trusting with them, from what I've seen. MK Ultra was, of course, used by the CIA to instigate operations of mind control. Sidney Goltsiev was an American military shrink who developed poisons for the CIA. And he had a passion for folk dancing as well. It's interesting, it's American-based, however the technology was also deployed on myself remotely in the UK under taxpayers' money. It was for a number of years. They were making my life a living hell with this technology. Sidney Galtiev, of course, was a stutterer, but was awarded a degree in speech therapy as well as having a club foot. I think it does take a deformed mind to carry out these operations on other people, so that comes as no surprise to me. In fact, you have to be a psychopath to do this kind of work. The people who were doing this have to be psychopaths. They're at large, they're not accountable, and I feel that there is a whitewash going on, that this would need to be brushed under the carpet, as well as many other things that are happening in this green and pleasant land of ours. And I do this, I come out with all this, the messenger will get shot, but I'm doing this as a patriotic Englishman who believes in this country and believes that this is my public duty to come out with all this, because it is. I think so, via the medium of my radio show at the moment. And I saw one of these goons order a drink in a pub at the height of my harassment, as I'm going to say on this forthcoming film. I take the film crew through what happened in the pub. And none would, I think, looking at him, none would ever realise the charming smile the man gave to the barman, what they were involved with. They're just absolutely, you just wouldn't know. Past them in the street, you wouldn't know. And MK Ultra was, of course, activated, well, you may not know, was activated by the director of the CIA, Alan Jules. The agenda was to experiment on unwitting subjects that would crush the human psyche to admit anything. I know this last week I've been completely disorientated from an attack that happened to me. Didn't know where I was. That can happen, where I can be just disorientated, don't know where I am, don't know what I'm doing, especially when I've got a load of things to do, including writing. I get hit then. Is there a non-human element to it? I don't think so. In this case, I think that these people were, as I said in my previous interview to Unknown Origins Radio, developing a zero-evidence weapons technology. And it's a cruel world. It's a very barbaric and cruel world. The UK arm of these people, from 1999 onwards, did have a great go at cracking me up. And however, we've still got this new dimension of mind control and UFOs, and me being told to keep quiet about that, which I find distinctly disturbing and very odd, considering mainstream society suggests that UFO does not exist. However, if you're mainstream media listening to this radio show, this radio show specifically caters for those who are interested in UFOs and the paranormal. Interestingly enough, MK Ultra was used in the 1950s to subject people to various drug and mind control experiments. Director Richard Helms burnt all evidence of CIA involvement in MK Ultra, and of course the term MK stands for the agency's technical division, and the word Ultra is a classification designated from World War II intelligence. During my experiences, I would certainly have the honour of having MK Ultra style mind control delivered remotely to me, remotely from a secret location, night and day. These developed into what could be termed atrocities of the human mind, as they exposed my psyche to every conceivable item of torture and perversion, while at the same time telling me that I was insane and needed help. Their help. So what they do, in my world, in the world of the paranormal Jason Bourne, they hit you with this, they send you absolutely bonkers with it, and then they tell you, when they've caused it, that you need their help. And they blame you for going bonkers. Very clever, isn't it, listener? Very clever. It's a very cruel and real world. This is a very real thing that has happened. This is paranormal espionage. This is dream warfare. This is the reality behind it all. It's absolutely disgusting. It really was. And it appeared that these objects that were coming over the house, I was filming them, and this has some connection to the two. It is of note that I placed on a website on the internet the footage, the UFO footage, and all my paranormal goings on, and they came out of the woodwork, did these people. And interestingly enough, I think that they were experimenting with a non-lethal weapon, that I matched the victimology for what they wanted. Another term for this is strategic personality simulation. That was in a US Air Force report called New World Vistas Air and Space Power for the 21st Century. And it said this, listeners: It would also appear possible to craft high-fidelity speech in the human body, raising the possibility of covert suggestion and psychological direction. When a high-power microwave pulse in the gigahertz range strikes the human body, a very small temperature perturbation occurs. This is associated with a sudden expansion of the slightly heated tissue. This expansion is fast enough to produce an acoustic wave. If a pulse stream is used, it should be possible to create an internal acoustic field in the 5-15 kHz range, which is audible. Thus, it may be possible to talk to selected adversaries in a fashion that would be most disturbing to them. Can you imagine the UK Prime Minister and the President of the United States faced with a covert agency that is black, similar to something out of a James Bond movie, targeting them with this technology? That's what I'm trying to... Can you imagine that it's unaccountable? They're not accountable. As Eisenhower said, the military-industrial complex appears to have gone AWOL. Spine-chilling. And they used it with ruthless glee on me, and it did leave me in a daze while I was trying to hold down a full-time job and keep myself sane. And my job was very demanding. In fact, I enjoyed my job very much, and probably the saddest part of it all is these circumstances and 1,000 other things, including the departure of my father from this world, made me go away, made me just drop everything and say I've had enough, and I walked away from it. It was quite sad, really. And so it was bizarre for me to be followed around a local town, and it's it was interesting. I was being awoken night and day. And it was just bizarre having commands being driven into me to move out the house, commands being driven into me to do this, to do that, to do the other. It was very sinister indeed, and they were getting nowhere with me because it didn't appear to be working. For some bizarre reason, it just didn't appear to be working. I was followed at a local designer outlet. I was followed at a radio rally in Blackpool. And followed in pubs by the same people twice. You see, when you're studying all this, as you well know, if you've studied a bit of espionage and counter-surveillance, followed by the same people twice is a bit sinister. So, you see them in your local town one minute, and then they're at an AM radio rally in Blackpool the next was a bit sinister. And it was overt observation, and they were trying to covertly control me into some kind of Manchurian candidate, and it was all triggered by these mysterious objects that came in over the house, the unmarked helicopters that was looked at by Jane's Defence Weekly. It was baffling, frankly baffling. Now, you could easily label this as a false memory syndrome, but the evidence of the footage I have filmed, plus the helicopters, and the helicopter breaking every air regulation in the book in front of witnesses, and the helicopter also being unmarked, and the helicopter being checked out by Jane's Defence Weekly as being an AS-555 military helo, it means it speaks of an invisible ball, I feel, that you can see going into the back of a net, a bit like quantum physics. We don't see the effect, but we see the net move when the invisible ball hits it, and we see the net move. And it's similar to society at the moment. We see this chaos, the net moving, financial crisis, terrorism, this, that and the other. But yet there's some driving mysterious force behind it all. And I think humanity's being played off big style. I really do. And I think that should anybody go beyond the invisible line, that there is a reality beyond us, that there are people in other worlds perhaps, which isn't such a ludicrous thing after all, is it? Then you are met with an unwritten law, an unwritten silence, and they identified themselves, or kept appearing to be like some kind of police force, a silent police force. We are the police of the silence, they would tell me. Well, what is the silence? And I would ask, what is it? And they would say, we shall discuss that later. Now, for we will, as we can see, no government is admitting of the existence of life in other worlds. And it is, I believe, a combination of two things. That one, governments do not understand it, and that two, this earth is ruled by an invisible force that is a form of life that should be respected. And that came from a book written by Alec Newald, Newald's Co-Evolution book, where he was going to Auckland in New Zealand. We're going to have him on the show, and he disappeared for a number of days. In fact, he reappeared 10 days later, not sure where he was. He'd been in contact with these ETs, He had liaised with them, and he had a knock at the door from people asking to confiscate his car because it had been possibly subjected to high electrical voltage. He refused, and he ended up in the slammer. So when the persecution began for me, it was during the time of the mysterious helicopters and the UFOs being filmed over my house. What I'm trying to ascertain is, are the UFOs and the helicopters related to what they were doing, or were they two different things? Were these people actually, actually doing something? I remember when it first happened, I was staying in Southport, and I woke up to a thump in the head. It was like a synthetic thump, I remember it quite well, and a load of words being downloaded in front of me as if on a screen. This had been happening in my childhood as well. And it just would eventually become very stressful indeed. And with some educated guesswork, I concluded that these intrusions upon me were based on a source or some type of radio transmission. Other gems of torture that happened to me included waking me up as if I'd urinated the bed, waking me up in the bed as if I'd been defecated in, screams into the head, being set fire to, which happened recently actually. That was horrendous. And I'd keep a log of them. And the constant theme was, they were the police of the silence. Surely we are the police of the silence. We want you to join us, they would say. So the invitation was open, it would appear, to join this absolute cracking goon squad of psychopaths who obviously, I think, down the years became out of their depth with me because I went so deeply into what was going on. Coupled that to the presence of the presence of these mysterious objects who are continually flexing the muscles, and they've said that they are, then we can see that humanity appears to be caught up, I have concluded, after 30 years of dealing with this, in some covert war. We are caught up in some covert war. Why that is, I have no idea, but we can certainly see that the United States, if it was quantum physics and there was a goal hitting the back of a net, are being whacked continually. They really are being whacked left, right and centre. And that's very interesting. Very interesting for the future, indeed, is that, and it's not very good. What we're being warned continually, and it remained overt, but the covert and overt observation continued by them. And it just included with this technology every area of my life being taken over remotely. There are a high number of people who email me to indicate their experiences with this technology, but they don't want to go public with it. The messenger will get shot. I've developed a very thick skin. I'm going to need a plate of steel in front of me by the time I've finished, because people are asleep. They haven't quite realised what's going on. When I think the UK banks go to the wall and wealth confiscation starts to happen, then perhaps the British public might wake up. I could have got that completely wrong, and I hope people have a peaceful existence in our green and pleasant land. But it would appear forces conspire so that isn't happening. And I think that these UFO craft that I talk of were silent witnesses to the atrocities of the mind that was being done to me. My journals began in odd years, but the one in 1999 makes chilling reading, as the enforcement to make me a Manchurian candidate of a mysterious shadow government went on. One entry reveals the policing theme of them as while sleeping a telephone rings in my head. This was absolutely bizarre, but you hear this telephone ring in your head. But it isn't bizarre when you look at the research of the technology around you. If you look on the net, you'll find the technology is there to deliver this with ease. Phone ringing in the head. No joke, dear listener, and not a bizarre deluded fantasy, but some kind of high-tech transmitted simulation in a secret war situation that is beyond me. The phone rang, and in sleep, as if I am dreaming, but I'm not dreaming, it's as real as can be, you hear this guy going, PC 209 here, what can you see? Now, back then I would not have understood what this was about, but in later years I now understand this to be a covert observation attempt on the UFOs that were coming in over my house. It's hard to comprehend, but that's what they were doing. They were attempting to access a certain area, and didn't have much success with it, because What I see, they cannot see. That's been made very clear. So that's interesting. So what I'm giving you, dear listener, is insights into my paranormal style Jason Bourne world. You couldn't make it up. I haven't made it up. I've no reason to make it up. You know, I live very frugally, actually. There's no mega books in this for me. It's just doing it. It's just getting it out there to the public on Planet X. You know, there was, for example, in May 1999, 02:30, awoken with two slight prickly feelings in left and right hand side of the brain. References to the intelligence services. Wednesday the 17th, a theme tune played in my head. The entry for the 17th of May 1999 sounds wacky, but not if you take it from the perspective of a hidden hand responsible for all this. It's like ranging high-tech mind control artillery. That's what it is. It's high-tech mind control artillery, and everything is done for a reason, including including this strange advertising theme tune played at full volume in my head while asleep, and an entry in my logbook. That's all stopped, by the way. Because I think there are other covert forces involved in watching them. Again, this is an insight into a world that people seldom know of. And in my logbook, 19th of May 1999, it reads about, and I remember this quite vividly now. I have transmitted to me a knock on the door. It's like bang, bang, bang while you're asleep, as if somebody's knocking at the door, and all these special troops in dark clothing enter the house. It's a simulation. The technology to configure it, deliver it, and do that is somebody's gone to a lot of trouble to do it, and you hear the actual knock as if your whole head is being hit. There was, of course, no black-clad special ops troops at my door, but the theme is about mind control. No matter how much bullshit it is that they hit at you, it's all about the perfecting the delivery of it and making you as bonkers as possible when they're hitting you with it. That's what it's about. It could be any old crap, really. It really could. And a malicious phone call received at my house on the 9th of June 1999, and twice again on the 10th of June 1999. Do you know, I'm reading through all this. I could barely remember this. At 8:15 and 12:50. It's on the 11th of June, awoken from strange visions. I can barely remember this. And also at 02:30 and 0300 of that morning, my head appears to be nodding without control while in sleep, an odd sensation. So it's as if you're being asked questions in sleep, and you're nodding your head. It's bizarre, and it really is bizarre. It's like you're nodding your head. Oh, it's just so bad. Very upsetting reading this. Just reading out these various notes for you, listener, can get quite upsetting for me. Recalling all this. Banging noise heard, phone heard, various remarks said, all delivered via a form of mind control that causes inception into the very centre of thought. That's where it's at. At the very centre of where you manifest thought is where this technology comes in. It's very advanced. It's not just your normal control of mind, as they explored in the 60s and 70s. This is something a bit more advanced. I've got here the 17th of June 1999 at 02:30 approximately, awoken from heavy imagery and effects. I am, of course, it says here, being bullied. However, in those years the ordeal was terrible. It continues, and I've written that with no date or time in the journal. It's a vague memory, but it appears I'm caught up in something that I do not understand, and that is simply it. And as Sasha said a few weeks ago, I don't think that you can put a label on this. I don't think that you can. I really don't think that you can say, well, it was this, it was that, because I don't know, and that's the bottom line. And I think Sasha came out with an important point to put a belief on this is risky, but it happened. It really did happen to me, and is ongoing. The question I would like to ask in any television documentary I make is, did I make it up in my head? If I have done, then the complexity of my brain creating these effects and goings on and helicopters that were actually filmed by witnesses and being followed is quite remarkable, isn't it? That must mean I'm a genius, because it really did happen. And I have to stand my grounds, listener. I have to stand my ground with this, because it happened. And I was developing stress trauma problems because of it. and I spiralled into depression. At one point in the proceedings, you know, the place where I worked and the comradeship there was the only thing that was keeping me going, actually. And I would often attend my place of work in a dreadful state of mind, and due to all this, I think it was really my former job that kept me from the abyss. Nowadays, I'm freelance now. I do my own thing. I'm self-employed. I want to write my books. I want to get on with that. And I wrote an entry on the 7th of October 2000 where they said, I remember it quite well, and I remember bursting into tears from it, hiding under the bedclothes. It was a Saturday morning. I think it was a Saturday. They said, surely we are the police of the silence, the silencers. And they whispered it like that. I remember that quite well. We want you to join us. Why they wanted me to join them, I've no idea. I have got a rough idea now, and it's deeply esoteric. And they've missed the boat, so that's not going to happen. But the theme was to make me, I think, quite powerless. In a nation that's meant to stand for freedom and democracy, that isn't happening, is it? And there's a certain level of conspiracy of silence directed at the population. I've got here an entry for the 4th of December. I think that's the 4th of December 2001, yeah. Classic entry, as my mind was continually exposed to the imagery of perverse goings-on, which is typical of mind control and lack of sleep. I started to have eating problems, and it was at that point that they labelled me even more mental than before, with continual screams into me that I am fucking mental. So what they do, it's clever, isn't it, listener? What they're doing is they're hitting you again, and then you suffer the symptoms, and then they tell you that you're bonkers for suffering the symptoms that they have caused. It's clever, it's criminal, it's disgusting, and I think that the governments of this world, and the world in general, should be aware of what is going on and what has been going on here. And those people are still at large and are unaccountable. They are not accountable to anyone. Not even the Senate, not even Parliament. They're not accountable to anyone. If they can fly a helicopter over a street lamp and throw out all the flying regulations and just do what the hell they like, a bit like the Bank of England, a bit like the City, they're not accountable to anyone. They do their own thing, and this is where it's going down. As former US presidents and prime ministers, in the UK predicted, it's going down a certain road, and I don't like it at all, listeners, and I hope that we can abort from it. I really hope that we can. And, it's all high-tech delivery while asleep. And the bizarre incidents would continue, and it would appear that these strange craft were linked with all this, but I just observed and said nothing, really. One entry date given was spine-chilling. I know it was in 2000, and they were capable of keeping you awake while asleep. Now, this is a theme that is often cited by UFO researchers that are being harassed, where they keep you awake while asleep. One researcher from years back, who's no longer involved in all this, turned around to me and said that they were absolutely mentally exhausted, because what they would do is they'd run a simulation of them running a marathon while asleep, and then they would be contacted. Then they would be exhausted. Sorry, just misreading. Where am I, listener? Where am I with this? Yeah. Here we are with it. Yeah. So another thing that they would do is they would use like a drilling sensation in my head. It was exactly that. Now, I think that they were calibrating technology. They're using it. And they were drilling it into me, and you'd be asleep, and this would just be like a drilling sensation. And you'd hear this voice, this metallic booming voice, say, "Mr. Topping, you will contact us." And I would say, "Who are you?" And they would reply, "I am nobody. You will adhere to it." Were the instructions. Common also were attached to the crotch area with some type of artificial simulation. So there was a constant mocking of the forces of law and order from them. And of course the theme, the continual mysterious theme of the classified stuff, this continual theme of keeping it all hush and quiet. "Mr. Topping, you will contact us. Who are you?" I replied, "I am nobody, you will adhere to it." I'm reflecting on something that I wrote a long time ago. I warn you not, I kid you not, should I say. I kid you not on this. These strange objects that come in are flexing their muscles like an aircraft carrier would. And you know this, don't you? I'll say no more. And I think the proof of the pudding will be in the eating, to coin the phrase, because they will be on film. Film them again. There's muscle flexing going on from their part. And I'm saying that to you. So it's quite obvious to me that, you've made my life a living hell with all this. I'm not standing for it. And I hope that a stand will be made against you by the covert forces of this world. And that's all I'm going to say on the matter. It gets me raging, absolutely raging. Does all this, but it continued, listeners. On my harassment, it went very deep. It was very deep stuff. It was like some sort of covert war. As I repeated again, it really was. And some of the activities they did with this simulation technology was shocking. Sexual violations awoken from images of men with guns, various mobile phones messages left. I wish I'd kept them. I didn't. Numbers untraceable. One answering machine message, and that was odd. There was an answering which I wish I'd kept, but that appeared to have me under observation coming out of my local Tesco's, as the two debated me wandering out of the shop. It was just odd, but you heard the conversation of two people observing me on my answering machine as they were coming out the shop. What is even bizarre is, did somebody tap their phones and relay it onto me so that I could hear it? If so, that would mean that they're being watched. That's interesting, isn't it? And frightening on reflection, and it happened way back. And I'm still here dear listener. Still presenting my show, still trucking on. But the answering machine messages were distinctly odd. There was one where there was just one where they left the theme tune to the Queen song on my answering machine thing for no apparent reason whatsoever. Really, I was in Leeds at the time. It was really scary, really scary. And I'd be kept active during sleep with senseless chatter. It was quite hellish, and I was working night shifts at the time as well. I'd also been followed, as you well know, listener, on numerous occasions by them. And let's just get this situation right, because I'm going to take the film crew through this. But I was in a pub called the Cricketers Arms in Selby, and this guy, he walked in and he ordered a drink at the bar with a woman in her 50s. And they appeared not to be stopping long, and they took up position to observe me. Not realising perhaps that I'd clocked them first. And as I walked past to go to the toilet, he looked at the woman and said, "I see he's off to the toilet again." Now this is in reference to his constant and alarming mind-invasive techniques that were waking me up to go to the toilet at all hours. It's a common technique where they wake you up to go to the toilet. This technology is absent without leave, and it's on mission creep. And we must make a stand. It is my public duty, no matter what the flack is that comes at me, to stand ground and say this is what has been going on. And I felt that he may have followed me into the toilet, but he didn't. And I didn't have a clue what to do, if he did actually. I walked past him again, and I am sure the purpose was to communicate some kind of fiendish plan to me. I could guess what it was. But the woman did a bizarre thing in this pub that we were in. She tried to get my attention in a mirror, and she held her head back and looked at me, tilting her head slightly, and then said, "Why won't Tony communicate with us?" "I don't know," he said. "Come on, let's go," looking at me like I was some type of stranger in a foreign land. In other words, he was looking at something that was out of his depth. He was out of his depth with me. So these people obviously had got an insight, but not quite enough to take it that bit further, because there's something mysterious behind in them there hills. Oh yes. Anyway, and it's a world I even could not understand, listeners. And the second time also happened in a pub a few months later, and I took the film crew through that as well. They were very cool customers, these two. They really were. And they wandered in to observe me. The woman in question, well, I didn't realise at first that they'd wandered in to observe me, but they had done. They calmly got a drink, and they were sat there, and when I left the pub, she came out with me, stood next to me, foreign accent, and she said, "See you later, Anthony." and I'll go through that with the film crew that for Filter View Films, who are going to upload this to YouTube. Take you through it all. It was bizarre, to say the least, because I'm known as a Tony. It's a frightening business. It really is, and I've no idea what I was exposed to. And the entries around the harassment and what is said is possibly subliminal. I wrote letters of complaint. I did this, I did that. I was a man in a desperate situation. I really was. Couldn't understand what was going on. And it's interesting. Really is interesting. I'm going to go into part 2. I think that there was non-lethal technology used on me. I think that they were calibrating advanced weapons technology on a weapons platform that was very high-tech, and a number of issues were going on here with them. Yeah, I do. And I'm glad I got through it, dear listener, and I'm a braver and stronger man for it. And this is what we've got to do. We've all got to make a collective stand. When I come out with this on the internet, or when I come out with this in the media, I'm met with this strange muteness. Because it's a bit too much to handle for people, so I'm met with this kind of stress, especially from my own conspiracy quarters, the people who are in the truth movement and all that kind of thing. They're not in their backyard either, for some very bizarre reason. But a stand must be made, against these things that are going on in our society. A stand really must be made. I'm moving on to part 2, some more fascinating article that I want to share with you about mind control in part 2. This is Tony Topping, Planet X. Now, hunting the UFO mystery, Adventures into the Unknown, is an event that we've arranged for Saturday the 9th of November 2013, and it's between 1300 and 1800 hours. It's a one-day series of lectures, and it's presented by 3 of the UK's leading UFO researchers, writer and author Nigel Mortimer, broadcaster, myself, Tony Topping, and UFO experiencer Paula Green. Now, the talks will be followed by an evening skywatch at the Settle Sundial portal site. Refreshments and stores will be available, and the tables to rent are open to all at £10 each. The event will be held as follows at the St John's Church Hall, Settle, North Yorkshire, England, BD 24 9JH. That's the St John's Church Hall, England, BD 24 9JH. Tony Topping is speaking at 1:15 on remote viewing. Nigel Mortimer is speaking on portals and UFOs, and Paula Elizabeth Green is speaking on her own UFO contact experiences called Yorkshire's Fourth Kind. There will be a question and answer sessions, and at one point in the evening there will be the opportunity for those wishing to attend the evening skywatch to eat and visit Settle. At 7:30 p.m. we'll reassemble back at the church hall to attend a skywatch at the portal location. This could be very, very interesting indeed, so bring your cameras. Tickets will be available for an online purchase to secure a seat, or if preferred you may pay on the door. The price is £20 for the whole afternoon and evening, and I can assure you listeners I'm giving away a free DVD on remote viewing that's worth £30, and it's absolutely excellent. It's packed with courses, materials, the Russian remote viewing stuff, which is very rare material indeed. Now, tickets can be purchased from the following website, which is http, the usual / and then hunting-the-UFO-mystery.webnode.com. So that's hunting-the-UFO-mystery.webnode.com. We look forward to seeing you there. Hope you'll come and say hello, and I greatly think that it's going to be a smashing event.
Planet X, online, on your mobile.
Now, I'll be coming out with a new book in the next few weeks, few months or so. That's if it's not denoticed. And it's going to be called The Paranormal Identity. And it's going to take you through all of this and what I have been through. And at my website, tonytopping.co.uk, is an article. There was another article that I'm going to put up as well, which was by Arlene Turner in a 4-part series regarding mind control. That and this one, what I'm about to share with you now, is one of the most downloaded web pages off my site. It's an article by a psychotherapist called Carol A. Smith. It's a long title, but it's one of the ones that flies off my internet site for downloads, continually downloaded. and it's called The Diagnosis of Psychosis in the Light of Mind Invasive Technology. Nexus magazine incorporated this in their article. And for those of us who were trained in a psychoanalytical approach to the patient, writes Carroll, which was characterised as patient-centred, and by the way, I studied Carl Rogers and counselling, and I've got a bit of an insight into this world. We have to... What she's writing is there has to be an effort to understand the world of the other person entailed an awareness that the treatment was essentially one of mutuality and trust. And the American Psychiatric Association's diagnostic criteria for schizotypal personality was always a cause for alarm. Now, in the third edition, 1987, of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, there was at least 4 of the characteristics set out for a diagnosis of being schizophrenic. An approved selection of 4 could be magical thinking, telepathy or sixth sense, limited social contact, odd speech, and oversensitivity to criticism. Your presenter has obviously passed all of those 4 with flying colours. How we explain the helicopter coming in over the lampposts, and how we explain the UFO that's an aircraft that travels sideways and backwards is beyond me, but there you go. By 1994, the required number of qualifying characteristics were reduced to 2 or more, including saying hallucinations and negative symptoms such as affective flattening or disorganized or incoherent speech, or only 1 if the delusions were bizarre or the hallucination consisted of a voice keeping up a running commentary on the person's behaviour or thoughts. Phew. I had gunfire and screams, so we're all right there. Now, at the time of writing, the next edition would be out in the year 2010. So it's quite an old article, but an absolutely brilliant article that I'm wishing to actually share with you here. So there was a lot of work going on into this, and what was happening was there was certain psychologists from Reichman, Harold Sears, R.D. Lang, all trained as psychiatrists, and all of them were rebels against the standard procedures, including John E. Mack. And they provided a way of working with people very different from the psychiatric model, which seemed to encourage a society to repress its sickness by making a clearly split-off group, and the carriers of it. So a psychiatrist in a mental hospital once joked to Carol Smith with some truth when commenting on the number of carrier bags carried by many of the medicated patients around the hospital grounds, that they assessed the progress of the patient in terms of the reduction of the number of carrier bags. It is too often difficult to believe, however, when hearing the history of a life, that the schizophrenic was not suffering the effects of having been made consciously and unconsciously the carefully concealed carrier of the ills of the family. For someone who felt his mind was going to pieces to be put into the stressful situation of the psychiatric examination, even when the psychiatrist acquitted himself with kindness, the situation of the assessment procedure itself can be an effective way to drive someone crazy or more crazy. Reference Liang, 1985, page 17. But if the accounting of bizarre experiences more or less guaranteed you a new label or a trip to the psychiatric ward, there is even more reason for a new group of people to be outraged, and I'm one of them, about how their symptoms are being diagnosed. A doubly cruel sentence is being imposed on people who are the victims of the most appalling abuse by scientific military experiments, and a totally uncomprehending society is indifferent to their evidence. Very eloquently put, Carol, I must say. For the development of a new class of weaponry now has the capability of entering the brain and mind and body of another person by technological means. Harnessing neuroscience to military capability, this technology is the result of decades of research and experimentation, most particularly in the Soviet Union and the United States. Reference Welch, 1997-2000. We have failed to comprehend that the result of the technology that originated in the years of the arms race between the Soviet Union and the West has resulted in using satellite technology not only for surveillance and communication systems, but also to lock onto human beings, manipulating brain frequencies by directing laser beams, neural particle beams, electromagnetic radiation, sonar waves, radio frequency radiation, soliton waves, toroidal fields, and by use of those or other energy fields which form the areas of study for astrophysics. Since the operations are characterized by secrecy, it seems inevitable that the methods that we do know about, that is, the exploitation of the ionosphere, our natural shield, are already outdated as we begin to grasp the implications of their use. The patents deriving from Bernard J. Eastland's work provide the ability to put unprecedented amounts of power in the Earth's atmosphere at strategic locations and to maintain that power at an injection level, particularly if random pulsing is employed in a manner far more precise and better controlled than accomplished by the prior art, the detonation of nuclear devices at various yields and various altitudes. We're looking at HARP there, obviously. There are some patents owned by Raytheon, actually, that describe how to make nuclear-sized explosions without radiation, and describe power beam systems. In fact, if you look at Raytheon shares, they went absolutely through the roof when they were all about to bomb Syria. Luckily, that didn't come off. But there you go. As the MP George Galloway, who was on the programme a few weeks back, he's doing the killing of Tony Blair, and obviously a killing is to be made. I don't mean he's doing the killing of Tony Blair, that's the title of the film, The Killing of Tony Blair, because there's a money to be made. There was developments in electromagnetic pulses over the horizon detection systems. A more disturbing use is the system developed for manipulating and disturbing the human mental process using pulsed radio frequency radiation, or RFR. Now that is a use for a device for causing negative effects on human health and thinking. The victim, the innocent civilian target, is locked onto and unable to evade the menace by moving around. Too true. The beam is administered from space. The HARP facility as military technology could be used to broadcast global mind control as a system for manipulating and disturbing the human mental process using pulse radio frequencies. Now, these super powerful radio waves are beamed into the ionosphere, as we well know, heating those areas, thereby lifting them. The electromagnetic waves bounce back to Earth and penetrate human tissue. Dr. Igor Simarov of the Institute of Psychocorrection in Moscow says that it is easily conceivable that some Russian Satan, or let's say Iranian, or any other Satan for that matter, as long as he owns the appropriate means and finances, can inject himself into every conceivable computer network, into every conceivable radio or television broadcast with relative technological ease, even without disconnecting cables, and intercept the radio waves in the ether and modulate every conceivable suggestion into it. That's why such technology is rightly feared, and it is feared. That quote is, interestingly enough, from a German TV documentary in 1998. And if we were concerned before about the diagnostic criteria being imposed according to the classification of recognisable symptoms, we have reason now to submit them to even more harsher scrutiny because of this. The development over the last decade since the Cold War arms race has included a major strategic category, which is psychoelectric weaponry, the ultimate aim of which is to enter the brain and mind, unannounced, undebated, and largely unacknowledged by scientists or by the governments who employ them. Technology to enter and control minds from a distance has been unleashed upon us. It has, dear listener, been unleashed upon us. And the only witnesses who are speaking out about this horrendous technology, and it's got appalling implications for the future, are the victims themselves. I'm one of them, who are given the task of diagnosing mental illness and are attempting to silence them by classifying their evidence and accounts as the symptoms of schizophrenia, while the dispensers of psychic mutilation and program pain continue with their work, aided and unopposed, and, of course, unaccountable. And it was always crucial under the threat of psychiatric sectioning to carefully screen out any sign of confused speech, negativity, coldness, suspicion, bizarre thoughts, sixth sense, telepathy, premonitions, but above all the sense that others can feel my feelings and that someone seemed to be keeping up a running commentary on your thoughts and behaviour, and then reporting these to a psychiatrist or anyone else for that matter who was not of a mind to believe that such things as mind control could exist would be the end of your claim to sanity and probably your freedom. One of the salient characteristics of mind control is the running commentary, and it replicates so exactly, and I've had readers and listeners email me about this. One woman who wishes to remain anonymous emailed me some spine-chilling goings-on that was so spine-chilling with this technology that she ended up trying to hide in the garage, but there was no escape, bless her dear heart. And surely not without design. The symptoms of schizophrenia are present by artificial design from this technology. Part of the effort is to remind the victim that they are constantly under control or surveillance. The programs do vary, but common forms of reminders are electronic prods and nudges, body noises, twinges and cramps to all parts of the body, increasing heartbeats, applying pressures to internal organs, all with a personally codified system of comments on thoughts and events designed to create stress, panic and desperation. That's exactly how it works. And the thing with it is the most spine-chilling one of all. Well, it's not spine-chilling, but the most nastiest one of all is when you're asleep and you suddenly get an inadvertent body movement triggered, like an arm moving or a hand moving, and it's just sinister, dear listener, just sinister. And it's mind control, what we've just described then, at its most benign. And there's a reason to fear the use of beam energy to deliver lethal assaults on humans, including cardiac arrest and bleeding to the brain. Very nasty. The government system of secrecy has facilitated this, definitely. There have been warning voices. The government secrecy system as a whole among them is one of the most poisonous legacies of the Cold War. The Cold War secrecy, which also mandates active deception, a security manual for special access programs authorizing contractors to employ cover stories to disguise their activities. The only condition is that cover stories must be believable, and that was a reference from After-Governor Rosenberg in 1994 in the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist, and the paranoia has been aided and abetted by government intelligence agencies. In the UK, the fortifications against any disturbing glimmer of awareness of such actual or potential outrages against human rights and social and political abuses seem to be cast in concrete, complete with the ramparts and parapets. The stronghold of near science reigns supreme. In fact, to borrow Her Majesty the Queen's recent observation at the time of writing, there are forces at work of which we are not aware. Now, one cannot say that there is no British intelligence on the matter, as it is quite unfeasible that the existence of technology is not classified information. There was a liaison between British intelligence, Canada and American intelligence about all this in the 1960s. It's a widely held belief that the woman protesting, for example, dear listener, against the presence of cruise missiles at Greenham Common were victims of electromagnetic radiation at gigahertz frequency by directed energy weapons. Their symptoms included cancer, and it was consistent with radiation effects, as reported by Dr. Robert Becker, who has been a constant warning voice against the perils of electromagnetic radiation. Now, it's a long article, is this article, quite a long one, but I think it's essential that we continue with it. The full article is at my website, tonytopping.co.uk, but Carol brings up some interesting reports and facts and figures and research. It's probably one of the best articles on mind control in terms of how people perceive you when you actually say that this is what has happened to you. On the 25th of May 1995, the Guardian newspaper in the UK carried an article based on a report by Nick Lewer, the peace researcher from Bradford University, listed more than 30 different lines of research into new age weapons. Some of the research sounds even less rational. There are, according to Lewer, from that article, plans for pulse microwave beams to destroy enemy electronics and separate plans for very low frequency sound beams to induce vomiting, bowel spasm, epileptic seizures and also crumble masonry. Further, the article states that there are plans for mind control with the use of psycho-correction messages transmitted by subliminal audio and visual stimuli. There is also a plan for psychotronic weapons, apparently the projection of consciousness to other locations, and another to use holographic projection to dismantle propaganda and misinformation. Apart from this notable exception, it is difficult to locate any public statement of the problem in the UK. Now, the information out there is quite limited on the psychological profiles of those who are employed to practice surveillance on others. It's quite limited, but it's not difficult to imagine the effects on the personality that would ensue with the persistent practice of such an occupation, so constantly exposed to the perversions. One gains little snatches of insight here and there. In his book on CIA mind control research, John Marks quotes a CIA colleague's joke, always revealing for personality characteristics. If you could find the natural radio frequency of a person's sphincter, you could make him run out of the room real fast. One wonders if the same amusement is derived from the ability to apply, say, infrared sound above 130 decibels, which is said to cause stoppage of the heart, according to one victim or activist, from his readings of a report from the Russian parliament. Left to themselves, these servants of the state may well feel exempt from the process of moral self-scrutiny, but the work must be dehumanizing for the predator as well as the prey. It is probably due to that to the need to control their agents in the field was an incentive to develop the methods in use today. It is also an effectively brutalizing training for persecuting others. Meanwhile, the object, the prey, in a bid for not only for survival, but also in a desperate effort, to warn his or her fellows about what is going on, attempts to turn himself into a quantum physicist, a political researcher, a legal sleuth, an activist, a neurologist, a psychologist, a physiologist, his own doctor, since he cannot know what effects this freakish treatment might have on his body, let alone his mind. There are always new methods to try out which might prove useful in the search to find ways of disabling and destroying opponents. Air injected into brains and lungs, lasers to strike down or blind, particle beams, sonar waves, or whatever combination of energies to direct or destabilize or Quite lamentable that a neuroscientist with a professed interest in understanding schizophrenia should seek to provide light relief to his audience by making jokes about schizophrenics being people who are convinced that the CIA has implanted devices in their brain to control their thoughts, and I think, as the author writes, the calculated and technological entry into another person's mind is an act of monumental barbarism, which obliterates, perhaps with the twiddling of a dial, the history and civilization of man's mental development. Well done, you all. It is more than an abuse of human rights. It is the destruction of meaning for anyone who is forced into the hell of living with an unseen mental rapist, like I was, dear listener, like I certainly was. The effort to stay sane is beyond the scope of tolerable endurance. The imaginative capacity of the ordinary mind cannot encompass the horror of it. We have attempted to come to terms with the experiments of the Nazis in concentration camps. We now have the prospect of systematic control authorized by men who issue instructions through satellite communications for the destruction of societies while they are driving new Jaguars and Mercedes and going to the opera. And as I've repeatedly warned, the surveillance state has gone mission creep. It's absent without leave. It is beyond what Edward Snowden is saying. It's not just simply tapping your emails and phones. It's going into this. And I think the author, in this very long report that she's written, which takes a considerable amount of pages, I'm giving you the highlights here, continues to say that if in the present confusion and insecurity about the search for evidence of weapons of mass destruction, we conclude that failure to locate them, whatever the truth of the matter, encourages us to be generally complacent, then we shall be colluding with very dark forces at work if we conclude that a course of extreme vigilance signifies paranoia, for there may well be other weapons of mass destruction being developed and not so far from home, weapons which, being even more difficult to locate, are developed invisibly, unobstructed, unheeded in our midst, using human beings as test beds. Like ESP, the methods being used on humans have not been detectable using conventional detection equipment. It is likely that the signals being used are part of a physics not known to scientists without the highest level of security clearance. To ignore the evidence of victims is to deny, perhaps with catastrophic results, the only evidence which might otherwise lead the defenders of freedom to becoming alert to the development of a fearful new methods of destruction, manipulating terrorist groups and governments alike. These sinister and covert forces may well be very thankful for the professional diversion of the victims and for public ignorance. Public ignorance, media ignorance, absolutely spot on. Now, this article is called On the Need for the New Criteria of Diagnosis of Psychosis in the Light of Mind-Invasive Technology by Carol Smith, and it's on my website, tonytopping.co.uk. In fact, I think we'll have Carol on the show, and she can come in and give us an update about all her research. I've not spoken to her for a while. It's about vigilance, it's about standing one's ground, dear listener. I'm glad you joined me. This is Tony Topping. It's Planet X. I'm off now to the Lamb and Flag. Perhaps later on when I sleep this evening I shall confront my terrors again. The battle thunders on.